Next presentation is on the establishment of the Special Ocean Science Zone, and it will be presented by Mr. Yang Hee Cheol of KIOST. And in order to build a productive special ocean science zone, he's going to share with us his input. And he is the head of the Marine Law Policy Institute at KIOST. And especially, marine settlements and marine disputes are one of the areas of expertise. Hello, I'm Yang Hee Cheol with KIOST, just as introduced. It's the special zone or special ocean zone is not my area of expertise, but the reason why I came up with this title presentation is because it's related to the vision of KIOST for the next 50 years. And from our point of view, 5 decades is a long history. And with Busan as a medium, we were included in Yeongdo area. So even though we have a 5-decade long history, as a cluster, in interaction with other institutions, we do not have a long history in terms of that. It has been only 5 years. So, we are in the early stages of forming clusters, in a sense. So looking at the next 50 years, what would be our driving forces? In the past, we thought that as clusters, we might have limitations and we have to work with other agencies. So what would be the future directions? So that is why we are considering the Special Ocean Science Zone. So when it comes to legislations, we have 2 similar acts: Special Act on Promoting Special R&D Zones and Special Act on Designating and Promoting Ocean Industry Clusters. So we have these 2 acts, and what's more relevant is the first one, Special Act on Promoting Special R&D Zones. The second one is about idle ports. So you might think this is relevant, but it's slightly different or irrelevant when it comes to Special Ocean Science Zone. So I am going to look at the possibility of a Special Ocean Science Zone in relation with the Special Act on Promoting Special R&D Zones, and do we really need to have a Special Ocean Science Zone? So regarding this, the first one, the objective of this R&D zone is enabling R&D between research institutes, universities, and companies within the region. And this has a long history in the Korean market. In 1973, we had the concept of TEDOC, R&D Academic City Basic Plan. And it is called TEDOC Special Complex, but it's not just in TEDOC area. We see many R&D special zones in Gwangju and Daegu. So it doesn't have to be TEDOC. So in 2012, we got rid of the name TEDOC, and we only had the name R&D, special R&D zones. So as long as it can produce results and profits or benefits, we stuck to this concept of special R&D zone. And also, other than these special zones in metropolitan areas, we have this concentrated special zones in different areas. So across Korea, for the purpose of R&D, we have 2 different areas where we have different approaches. So at the metropolitan level, and second, more concentrated specific local level. So two different approaches at different levels. So from 2013 up until now, you can see how two different approaches are taken. For metropolitan special zones, and second, concentrated smaller level special zones. It requires infrastructure, and on the basis of this infrastructure, we provide proactive interaction. And regarding the transfer of technology, this will be handled by the academia and research institutes, and on the basis of this interaction, companies can create jobs. So that's how these three different players have been interacting with each other. And what we need to consider is within the concept of special zone, we have to think about how the driving force can be linked to this special zone concept. So if you look at special R&D zones in Korea, well, scientifically and globally, well, they played a pivotal role, that's for sure. And from the birth of the concept, they were based in specific areas, and they contributed to providing the infrastructure within the region to attract investment. So the purpose of designating these metropolitan special zones was clear, and we had clear directions as well. And also, the clusters that were included in these special zones, they had clear goals and directions. And thanks to these efforts, building on data complex, these special zones played a crucial role in driving the economy of Korea. But one thing we need to keep in mind is, well, for instance, in the case of Taedok Special Zone, well, it has more than 50 years of history. And if you think about other special zones, which has more than a decade of history, well, let's take the example of Taedok Complex. It was the driving force of the Korean economy. And what are the challenges for Taedok Complex? And going forward, what do we have to resolve? So when it comes to clusters, these are the 4 different stages of development. They're formed, they grow, and they can be sustainable or they can retreat. So if you think about the Taedok Complex, is it in the growing stage or is it in the sustainable stage? Well, sustainable might sound nice, but that will mean that will lead to the last stage, declining. And we have this driving force, and we will need another additional force. So what will be this additional new driving force? Well, this stage doesn't necessarily mean that you will follow these steps one by one. With a new driving force, then you can go back to the growing stage. So development can be generated and regenerated. Whether data is in the formation or growing stage, well, we have to think about the next stage for data complex. But for the next 50 years, for this Taedok special zone, these must be the issues for data complex. What will be the innovation policy or innovation strategy for Taedok so that it can be sustainable? We are talking about the Special Act on R&D. And even though we do have special legislations, this is kind of decentralized, and this covers different regions, including Busan, not just Taedok. And the central government might be thinking that the budget can be decentralized and distributed to other regions as well. Then, given this situation, how can the data complex maintain its position to lead the Korean economy and R&D? And second, we see this huge demographic change, the demographic decline. And we're seeing a drastic reduction in the number of people who have engineering background. So human resources is something that we need to bear in mind at research institutes. Unless we resolve these issues that I mentioned, whether it be data cluster or other cluster, well, we are bound to see some serious challenges. So this is the cycle that we're going through. So whether it be a cluster, complex, well, you might have different terms for the same concept, but anyway, it goes through these stages from emergence, growth, sustainment, and decline. And on the basis of this model, from KIOST's perspective, is it good for us to be incorporated into the flow of these special zones that these clusters went through? Or another thing we can think of is it doesn't have to be. The last 5 decades is something that we went through as one institute. And as a cluster, we are in the beginning stage, the emergence stage. So we have to think about whether this different development stage is something that is applicable to us, or if we have to think of another possibility. We are seeing rapidly changing environment, not just in Korea, but around the globe. And throughout the history of the human race, we saw these major changes, and we don't know what the next change will be. We're faced with the fourth industrial revolution, and we have to try to find a solution to global issues, not just local issues. So moving away from our past practices at KIOST, we have to think about how we can work with other players and other agencies or institutes in order to deal with global issues at hand. At different age, there were many different theories that wanted to pursue development. I'm not an economist, and I think well before 1800, I believe that there were other concepts as well. But anyway, what I can find is Marshall in 1820, and we have this concept of industrial zone. So what that meant was, well, we can have interaction as a group instead of being a single institute so that we can be more effective. So in the 1800s and in 1900s, they had this idea of clusters and concentration. So in 1990, we had a scholar named Porter, and in 1995, a scholar named Jacobs, who actually put these concepts and adopted the concept of clusters. So the cluster concept that we just started to see, and if you think about where we fit in this table, well, this is something we can consider. All these theories came from economic theories. For example, it started with concentration, we do convergence, and we do joint interaction and joint response. So this can be linked to a national innovation at a macro level. Then when it comes to the cluster or special zone at KIOST, well, do we have to follow this concept, this flow, or what would be the next step for KIOST? If you think about the flow of the time, but we also have to think about how this can be converged with social factors. And that is because we want to be able to converge issues in other fields as well. I believe that we have many foreign cases. There are these cases that naturally occurred, and some of them are led by states, and the Silicon Valley on the right-hand side is something that naturally occurred on the basis of clustering, and this is the Hsinchu Science Park in Taiwan, where TSMC is located. Then last, when it comes to the special ocean science zone, well, if you think about the conditions of Busan, well, Busan has very favorable conditions. If you think about the location and its environment, it has good conditions to become a special ocean science zone. And I believe that evaluation does tell a same story. But when it comes to a possible Busan Special Ocean Science Zone, and its possible limitation can be, well, this is a personal view, just my view. But one of the challenges or issues can be, well, when we say special zones, we want to pursue horizontal relationship. But as we have many large major companies located in Busan, we see some hierarchy and vertical relations rather than horizontal. And with this type of relationship established, it's not always easy to start up a company or try innovative ideas. So I believe this is something we need to improve going forward. In Busan, we have two major clusters. First one, North Port Master Plan, and second, Maritime New Business Boost Belt. So within the local geography, I believe that the possibility is there. But if you think about the possibility and if you link that possibility with the future directions, well, it's not very easy. And we can come up with some systems, but a creation of a special ocean science zone doesn't necessarily translate into interaction with other institutes or other players. And at KIOST, we have this 50 years history. But as a cluster, we are only in the emergent stage. So we were just born as a cluster. And how to grow this foundation and what would be the driving force for this. For that, we will need a driving force of ocean science so that this particular cluster can grow into the next stage, which is growth from emergence. So when we create a special ocean science zone, these are the critical factors that we need. First, we need some systemic rationales, for instance, legislations, including the Special Ocean Science Zone Act. And if you think about institutes within the clusters, they're in the stage of emergence. So interaction is not very active, and each institute is acting in a more of an independent manner. So that will mean that they can go back to their past practices of acting alone instead of working together. So when we designate a special ocean science zone, we're learning from the case of Taedok Complex. We can think of a state-led approach, and we have to have a clear goal for this cluster. And when we develop these into systems, well, for example, we can have this basic framework act, and also, as we saw the case of the Silicon Valley, well, if you leave a company, then we have this anti-compete clause. But in the Silicon Valley, there is this prohibition of the anti-compete clause. So whenever you want to quit, we want to create an environment where people are enabled to leave the current company to start up a new company. And also, the special ocean science zone should include all the stakeholders and international communities and international organizations. Well, the time has changed. It doesn't take efforts at national level, at a government level, but I believe that perspectives of research institutes also have to change. So in the past, when we looked at the ocean-related issues, well, people wanted us to study and resolve some ocean-related matters, and they were more complacent. So their expectation would be just us studying the ocean-related matters. But what's required of the time we are living today is some global issues at hand, and to be able to deal with these issues. I believe that this is a right change that we need to see. And if we can approach this issue with the establishment of special ocean science zones, well, we have to make sure that we have smooth communication. We do not have any regulatory interruptions or glitches so that we can have smooth interaction. A few years ago, I think it was in 2015 when we held dynamic KIOST. This is one of the things that I touched upon. Well, when it comes to the ocean, future ocean vision, well, the sea, we believe that this is the foundation for the human race, and we tend to think that it will resolve all the issues that we have. But studying the sea doesn't resolve all the issues that we have, but it will help us resolve some of the issues and part of the issues. So I believe that that is the take that we need to have. So with that in mind, if we can establish a special ocean science zone, instead of just relying on communication within our organization, we can switch to a more global issues and global perspectives. So with that, I'd like to conclude my presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, this was a relevant topic, and well, I understand you had to spend some time because it's a crucial issue. Well, like I said, we have some keywords for the future of KIOST. And one of the things is the Special Ocean Science Zone, and the other thing is KIOST Holdings. So I believe that that sets the tone for our future at KIOST. And I hope that we have a smooth first step towards that direction.